Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of our show. We've got a very special episode here today. We're not really slotting this one into any kind of neat box or playlist. This is all about storytelling. And I've got two guys that I have shared many stories with over the last couple of years, and they're great at telling stories. So welcome once again, George and Craig Sybert from Musing Podcast.
I can't even speak. I don't even know what to say. I can't look in the monitor and see Craig in a Boba Fett helmet and keep a straight face.
Yeah, who's this strange guy? Who is that strange guy?
Storytelling begins.
Hey, Craig, just in case the camera didn't catch you, you got to put that right back on and then say something and put the helmet back on, or at least hold it up, because I'm not sure if we got you. I don't know if we got you.
What?
Yeah, well, you know how the Zoom is. Like it gets the person who's talking, so I don't know. We may not have got. So say something first, Craig.
Okay, so I need to talk first so you guys can hear me.
There we go.
There it is. And there it is.
I love that Iron Man shirt. So this comic book geezer over here loves it. So anyway, let me preface what we're going to discuss today. So I want to give props to their podcast, and they recently did one celebrating their 50th episode, which was a lot of fun to listen to. And that kind of inspired me to ask them to come on the Sea of Tranquility show to sort of go down an avenue that they did, but a little bit more condensed. And they talked a lot about like 50 moments in their lives, and a lot of it had to do with music and how music affected certain events and things like that. And I thought, it'd be really cool to just talk about, each one of us talk about some really interesting events in our lives that are tied directly to a song or a band or an album, or vice versa, that when you think of a song, a band, or an album, it reminds you of a specific event in your life. That was kind of noteworthy, but something that, like, every time you hear that song or listen to that record or think of that band, you remember that specific time in your life, right? Or that incident or that event or what have you. So I tasked the both of them to kind of think about 5 key ones that would be fun, a little bit of storytelling. I did the same thing. A couple of my viewers might have heard me mention over the last couple of years, but I'm going to go a little bit more in detail here. So these are fun stories for me that I'm going to like. I see George has got a ridiculous list. That's the original 50, right?
Yeah, this is the original 50. So Pete had a lot more homework to do than we did, because we already had 10 times the required homework.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know if I could do 50. I probably could, but most of them would involve like drunken stories with the buddies or crazy concert stories or whatever.
So
I know those are cool, right? Yeah, exactly.
Some of mine were.
Yeah, one of mine's going to involve sort of that, now that I can think about it.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right. Well, Craig, since you started, you can go first.
Okay, well, I'll tell you. Like you said,
and before you go any further,
yeah,
I got the brothers on the line. I beat you to it.
Yes.
I almost forgot I wanted to, because you didn't do it. I was like, I'm going to beat Craig to it this week.
So again, we did this a couple weeks ago. We did episode 50, and some of these did actually come off my list that I didn't talk about in depth that I kind of wanted to. Things that were actually moments in time that I can still, jump back to and feel. And I did actually tie this. I actually talked a little bit in depth about the first one that I got on my list, but I didn't tie it to a song. And George will definitely be the same on this one. So, Cumbersome by Seven Mary 3. When it comes on the radio, I am instantly transported back to when my local band opened for Seven Mary 3. It was a pretty decent sized venue in Ybor City, Florida. And a lot of national bands had come through there, and we had actually sold enough tickets the last couple of shows where we had played there that they asked us to come play for the Seven Mary 3 show. And it was an immediate yes for us. So all 3 of the band members were big Seven Mary 3 fans. The one younger one didn't know a lot about them, but he knew who they were, because they were probably
towards the end of their career.
Yeah, towards the end of their career.
Or popularity, anyways.
But the best story I could tell is, so there were three bands. There were two opening bands and then Seven Mary Three. And obviously you want to play as close as you can to Seven Mary Three. You want to be right there just before them. And the other band was just actually quite a bit of younger kids. They were probably early 20s. The name of the band was Stalling Dawn. And the arranger came out and said, well, you guys sold exactly the same amount of tickets. How do you want to figure out who goes, before Seven Mary Three? And that everybody just kind of looked around at each other and decided to do rock, paper, scissors for who.
Of course, why not, right?
And we put
the only
everything.
Fair thing to do.
We put everything in our drummer's hands, and I videotaped this, and he lost. So
of course,
we had to go on first. They got to go on directly before Seven Mary Three. They were a decent band. I honestly think we played better than they did that night. We've had bad nights, with the band and didn't play very well. But that night, I think we played on fire. We have a lot of video up on my YouTube page, actually, that a lot of the videos from that night that we played. But every time that song comes on, I'm just transported back to being on that stage and seeing all those people, because even though we were playing first and not right before them, there were still people funneling in for Seven Mary Three that were listening to us. I mean, we had our whole front crowd, we probably had, how many we have there that were with us, George? Probably 20, 30?
At least, yeah.
Half of them with our t-shirts on. It was kind of the peak of our career and the end of their career, Seven Mary Three's career. But yeah, just that night, and then just being on stage and seeing all those people out there and getting to that finale where we do a Sabbath medley. We play War Pigs is the second one, but the first, Paranoid into War Pigs and back into Paranoid. And by the time I got done with that, the place was probably 300 to 500 people.
Yeah. It was 3/4 full, and everybody was singing. I mean, not for now, everybody was singing along, but most people know the words to Sabbath. So,
that's why we did it. It's a catchy song. You can, everybody can sing along to it. You can let the people play sing the second line.
And you're definitely going to catch them as they're walking in, right?
It's
getting situated.
Yep.
Because everybody knows those songs, just like George said.
So it was that night was just, and every time that song comes on, it takes me back to it. I mean, George and I have kind of had a connection with that song anyways. That opening line is one of his favorite I'm surprised it didn't make it on his 50 list, that opening line, because he what's that opening line, brother?
Yeah, she calls me Goliath and I wear the David mask.
Yep.
That's poignant in a lot of ways for me, but
yeah, every time that song comes on, it kind of takes me back to that whole night. And we got to go backstage afterwards to the green room and meet them. So when we got off and the other band went on, that gave us enough of a gap between the two. So I guess it kind of worked out good for us, but it kind of gave us enough of a gap. The singer was like totally in his zone. He didn't want to talk to anybody. He was, yeah. But the guitar player was really great. The singer and I, Patrick Williams, and I sat and just talked to the guitar player probably for 20, 25 minutes. It was a great conversation talking about, guitars, playing music. He had a Gibson semi-hollow or a full hollow body, and just a beautiful, amazing guitar. And, I'd never played a hollow body. So we went back and forth about that and talked about that for 15, 20 minutes, and just a good experience backstage, because we'd been backstage, 3 or 4 times before with our band, and it was a blast. That song still just every time it comes on just kicks me back to that time. So
here you go. Great story.
So tag out.
George, you're up.
Well, you congratulated us. I want to congratulate you too. You posted on your YouTube channel, it's like 14,000 subscribers and
23,000.
Yeah.
4 million views.
4 million views. Okay, well, there's my dyslexia. Congratulations on that, though. That's impressive, and
thank you.
It just makes us more appreciative when you ask us to be on, because I know Craig likes it as much as I do, and we enjoy talking to you, and it's a blast. But we got to give kudos where it's due too. I mean, you propped us up, and that's the Sea of Tranquility YouTube channel is definitely hitting its stride, and congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm happy to love having you guys on, and I'm hoping that more folks will listen to your podcast who have seen you on here. That's what it's all about.
Sure, so, absolutely. Scratching backs.
Cool.
My first one is kind of my go-to is cover songs. like cover songs have played this unusually huge role in my life. It's almost like if I hear a song I like and I hear a cover that's, we did a podcast about covers, and we were on with you, covers that are better than the original or worse than the original. We've done a number of things on cover songs, but cover songs always trip me up. If I hear, even if it's Muzak playing in the grocery store or something, like, is that, it catches me. It always turns my head, and music in general has that power, but cover songs are just like scratch an itch that's unmasked. And Craig, I don't know if Craig is into it as much as I am, or I know we go back and forth. We've sent some really horrible ones in Messenger back and forth, and we've sent some really good ones.
That's when between all three of us, we secret Pope, letter behind the scenes. Pete and George and I have a conversation going on Facebook on a regular basis, and there are some songs shared in there that
wretched.
Oh man,
but it's tragically, like, I can't not listen to it. Craig sent a cover of Boston's "More Than a Feeling" that was some European. I mean, he could barely speak English. It was broken English, and it was just butchered. But I couldn't not listen to it. It's like this.
It's almost like deep down inside, you're hoping that someone comes up with a better version of a song that you love, right?
Maybe, and then, or if it's a song that's like, oh, that song sucks, and then you hear somebody do it different or better, you're like, oh, thank God somebody covered that song, and it's actually way better, So it works both ways, and it's one of the few things in music for me that works both ways, because if there's a great song and somebody covers it and ruins it, I still listen to it, and I'll even listen to it a number of times, like, to see if I'm like, am I not getting this or whatever. And then if there's, really horrible songs, like, oh, I hate that song, I can't even listen to a cover. Oh, I'll listen to the cover, and see how it goes. And, Pete sent some Asian lady singing, was it "You Shook Me All Night Long"?
Yeah, that was
It was horrible.
That was one of the worst I've ever heard.
Yeah, I mean, there are bad covers, and then there's that one. And I mean, and it trickles down to, I mean, even now there's these bands are going and retouring and it's at this point in some of these bands' careers, it almost seems like they're covering their own music. We've made at great length, David Lee Roth's attempts at his own music and butchering that even. And some of these, and it's coming to my, like Guns N' Roses is touring now. A lot of these bands are getting into an aspect where it's like, maybe David Lee Roth should have lip synced. I mean, with the backing vocals, in my opinion. So to me, it's almost, even that turns into almost like a cover, like these, or some of these bands, Foreigner, they've got a different lead singer now. Journey, they've got this young kid, Queen. So it's almost like, to me, it's almost like a cover band. It's almost, and I saw Boston with a different lead singer, and they've got a female, like, for the high notes, like, that kind of blends with the the male singer, to cover the high notes that Delp could hit. So it's kind of, it's always intrigued me, people's interpretations of music. Like, Craig, even his first one, they did a War Pig and Paranoid montage. They covered Sabbath. It's like this, the imitation is a serious form of flattery, but is it really? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, and that's always been my favorite part about it. And anybody that sends me anything cover wise, I'm addicted to it. It doesn't matter, even different genres. If, people have sent me country singers that have covered, rock songs, and I just have to see, and vice versa, rock songs that, or rock bands that have covered country songs. Who did that cover of The Thunder Rolls by Garth Brooks? Craig, you sent me, I think. Had to listen to it. I mean, we're not going to get too far in it. Yeah, because
I'll go find it.
Because it's the cover thing. But to me, it's always been a huge part of my life is cover song. And I don't know why, but anytime I hear it, it's one of those that just makes me happy. You know, if I hear it, it's like, ah, cool. It's somebody else's version. It's like you said, Pete, that you're hoping it's better than the original, or maybe it's worse than the original, so you can either mock it or you can love it, and it's a win-win for me. So go ahead.
So you've been into covers for most of your life then. That's interesting.
No,
yes.
Absolutely. I mean, as far back as I can remember, because on I'm the Man, I think 7-ish, Anthrax did this where they covered Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
quite good, I might say. Quite well.
I flip a coin. I really flip a coin. I think that's what started me on this. I thought that was one of the best covers. I'm like, wow, that is so. It's just different, but it's right there, and it started me down this road of, I guess that was early for me where I didn't realize how much that was done. And, even I think it transitioned from early, people writing songs for other people to, people covering, we went over that too at one point where, Stevie Ray Vaughan and Hendrix doing Little Wing. I mean, there's different, it's kind of the same, but different, I mean, flip a coin between Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan. I mean, come on, it's different versions, same song. So, but I can appreciate both, but on a different level. But I thoroughly enjoy covers, and as far back as I can remember. But Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath was the first one I really remember hearing and thinking, wow, I want whatever that is. I want to find more of that.
Well, I think historically, and not to get too sidetracked, but I think historically bands would do covers on their albums for a couple reasons. Maybe they were short, a couple tracks to get a full album together, or, in a lot of cases, hey, if we do a really good cover, we'll get some attention for it because we're going to cover a semi-popular song by a semi-popular band. People are going to instantly go right to that cover because people are going to know that song, right?
Right.
So
no, I agree. And I don't think there's a bad angle for cover song. And that's always been a huge part of my musical pocketbook was cover songs. I dig any and all. I'm a fan. So
cool. Fond music memories. Fond.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to go for mine. I'm going to kind of go in like chronological order. So I'm a little bit older than you guys, so I'm going to dip back into the early 70s here to start mine. I'm surprised I even remember this stuff. But so one of the earliest musical memories for me, and again, it's tied to like a time, not so much a specific day or incident, but when in the early 70s, excuse me, when my parents and myself and my brother, who was really young at the time, and my grandparents, we all moved from Brooklyn, New York to Goshen, New York. And we all lived in the same gigantic house together. My grandparents had bought this house as a summer home back in the 50s. And my father worked for the city of New York, so he commuted into the city Monday through Friday. We didn't see him much. So like he would leave at like 5:30 in the morning and he wouldn't get home till 8 o'clock at night. So he got home, ate dinner, and went to bed. And so we really didn't see him much during the week. So on the weekends, he would get up on Saturday morning. And we lived about maybe a 5 or 8 minute drive into the village of Goshen. So we would drive into town. He would throw my brother and I in the big Plymouth Fury, right? The 1972 Plymouth Fury, whatever it was. It was 67 Plymouth Fury, sorry. He would throw us into the car and we would go to the newsstand in the center of town so he could buy the newspapers. And he would give my brother and I got like a little allowance, like probably like a quarter or 50 cents or whatever it was a week. It was not much, but to a young 6-year-old kid or whatever, or 7-year-old kid, that seemed like a lot of money. But my father and my mother were both big on AM radio. AM radio was playing in every radio in the house, in the car. We always had music on. And I have fond memories of those Saturday morning drives into town. So I could spend my, measly allowance to buy comic books, right? A big Marvel Comics fan from like 3-4 years old. And I would look forward to those drives with Dad because, again, we didn't see him all week. We would spend and maybe like 15 minutes in total in the car coming and going, but he would have AM radio blast and then we would hear all those great like pop hit songs of the day. And I always kind of think of one song in particular that was kind of like the highlight, especially of one summer of all those rides. And that was Brandy by the Looking Glass, which was a huge hit. It was the only really big hit they had. I mean, amazing song. And it's always been one of my favorite songs. My favorite pop song. It's a great, pop rock song. And I always associate Brandy with those Saturday morning drives to the newsstand with Dad and my little brother to buy comic books in the newspapers. And for like a 6-7-year-old kid, man, that's all the world revolved around, right? Hearing cool pop songs on AM radio, buying comic books, reading Spider-Man and the Hulk and Iron Man and the Fantastic Four, and listen to Brandy and listen to Elton John and whatever else was playing on the radio. So my earliest musical memories were of AM radio in the Plymouth Fury to go get comic books with Dad.
That's, I mean, you can't put a price on that. I mean,
no, you can't, right? You really can't.
And that's what our 50 list was about. That's what this is, this YouTube episode's about. I mean, it's about the memories, it's about how stuff makes you feel. And it's about that stuff like that. I mean, we touched on it on our big list. My dad's big song is
Magic Carpet Ride.
Magic Carpet Ride by Steppenwolf.
Great one.
He does this. He's always done this funky 60s psychedelic dance to it. Yeah. And anytime it comes on, instantaneously from a childhood memory of my dad dancing to Magic Carpet Ride. So it's the same, kind of on the same token. It's once you hear a song, you hear Brandy, you think about that car ride. I hear Magic Carpet Ride, I think about my dad dance.
Exactly.
But that's Pete, that's kind of, yes, that's what we're talking about, but has it like ruined that song for you? I mean, I'm not in a bad way, but just for the fact that you can never listen to that song ever again, you personally, without that experience. I mean, there's nothing you can take away from that song ever again without having that experience. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just really weird to think about that, because had I not opened for 7 Mary 3 and that song be stuck in my head, it wouldn't affect me near as what it does now. And there's some days where it takes me back nostalgically, and there's some days where it takes me back and goes, man, I really wish I'd have stayed with the band. Really wish I would have done something with that band,
Well, I mean, it's a good question. And I let's say that I didn't go on those car rides. Okay. Would I still have gravitated towards that song? Would it still mean the same? I mean,
yeah,
it's a freaking great song.
It is.
Regardless.
Undeniable.
But I don't know if it would have such a strong place in my heart as it does if it wasn't for those rides with Dad. So I guess if that's what you get, I don't know. Yeah. I think I would still love the song regardless, because it is a genius of a pop song.
Yeah, so, but I think it just totally solidifies what we talk about with this, what we talk about in music in general, all three of us. And, you're on our YouTube and your rants and you talk about albums, and George and I on our podcast. This is what we talk about because it does that. And George joked last time when we recorded, I feel sorry for the people that don't have these experiences. They can't tie music to an experience, because it just feels like, I hate to be music snobs, but it feels like they're missing out.
We even got into that. Is that possible? Do people not? I thought about this.
That would be a fantastic side discussion, because how many younger folks who are like, 30 and under maybe have never had that. There is a possibility. And I tell you what, I run into people all the time who are in our age bracket who know absolutely nothing about music. They couldn't even tell you a favorite song. They just music.
You don't need that negativity in your life, Pete. I'm telling you.
But it boggles my mind that they never listened to radio, don't own a CD, never bought albums, maybe have seen one or less concerts in their life. And I find that very strange. How someone could just not make even a little room for music in their life.
Yeah. There's the quote of the day right there.
I don't know how people function without it.
I don't know either. Anyway, Craig, what do you got?
So mine's going to be tied to a song that I sent you guys earlier on Facebook Messenger. So in my band, we actually scraped up enough money to go to a recording studio and record. I think we ended up recording 6 or 7 songs, and it was a long 2 days of recording and sleeping on the floor, waiting for the next person to do their tracks. And if you've ever done any recording for an actual album, you know, guitars, you have to double track everything. You have to play a song and then play the exact song again, so it doesn't sound exactly the same, but you get a stereo effect. So I spent probably 6 hours total just recording for about 5 or 6 songs, and we were all burnt out. We drove back and forth. It was about a 40-mile drive each direction. We drove back and forth, but we were all burnt. I mean, we were there. We all went and supported each other. So when one guy recorded, the other 3 of us kind of hung out or stood outside if we needed to, and we just kind of supported each other. It was a really awesome, exhausting experience. And we got to the end, and the guy that was actually doing the recording, I mentioned this in our 50, that he was actually a singer and guitar player for a band called Pantera, and I think he was out of St. Pete in Florida. And we got done, and he's like, "Well, you guys got a little bit of time and money left. If you want to do another song, we can do one." And the drummer was completely passed out. He was gone. He wasn't going to be doing anything. And our bass player is like, "Yeah, do whatever you want." And Patrick and I I picked up the acoustic, and he set up the acoustic setup for us. And Patrick and I did a song that we had wrote. That was probably the second or third song that we wrote, him and I together, as just a duo writing music. That some of it ended up being electric later on, but we wrote acoustically, and he sang, and it was a song called Trapped. And it was just one of those moments in time where everything was perfect. The guitar sound was perfect. Patrick was on point with his singing, and it was at the end of a very, very long session, and I just didn't feel like I had anything else in me. But as soon as I started playing, it was there. That song just started rolling out. And you know, Pete, you as a musician, you know what that feels like when you're playing a song and you get in that groove, and you can tell that you're doing something that's going to stand out. And you know, we never made it big. We never made it huge. We never got a recording contract. We never got our album out there. It's not even on Spotify or anything like that. But that one moment added to what we had done that whole weekend was just the perfect solidifier to it. And I posted it to you guys. And if there's any way you can put it on your, when you post this, just add it to it, tag it to it. That's fine. But yeah, it's just one of those moments in music that I can, every time I hear that, I'm transported right back to that little small, it was a portable studio next to this guy's house. And I'm there. I'm there and exhausted from that weekend. So
that's very cool. Great story.
Good memories.
Yeah.
Cool. Me.
You.
The first time I heard Vulgar Display of Power by Pantera, I remember I listened to the radio a lot before I could afford to buy CDs. I was, 14, 15 years before I had a job of any to speak of. I literally went, I heard This Love, 98 Rock, Tampa's, it's still going now, Tampa's radio station, 98 Rock, played This Love. And I'm like, if you've heard the song, it starts off kind of melodic, but then it breaks into it's a very strangely broken up song. It's like melodic and then it just hits like ridiculous. And then it goes back to the melodic and back and forth. Well, anyway, I'm like, so I loved when it went to the heavy. And it was at a time in my life I was, I don't know, sophomore and junior in high school, something like that. And, we all have that teenage angst. We all have, whatever else going on. And I just didn't like life, or, I'm sure like most teenagers, things weren't, you couldn't do whatever you wanted to do. You couldn't drink beer or smoke cigarettes or whatever. Couldn't go to concerts you wanted to because your parents suck. But I went and I don't know if I bummed money off Craig or maybe my dad, one of the two. I'm like, dude, I gotta buy this album. And I actually called the radio station and asked them what the name of the album was. And he told me, he's like, Vulgar Display of Power. I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting, And then when I went to the store, I saw the album cover of the guy getting punched in the face. I'm like, well, whatever this is, I'm in. I'm 100% in on this. And I remember going home and I had a front-facing CD player that tipped out, and I set it in there, and I pushed play and had no idea, was not anywhere ready for what came out of the speakers, because I was raised on Styx and Blondie and the Eagles and blah blah blah, all of that softer rock genre thing. Well, yeah, I mean, there was even some disco mixed in. My mom did a lot of that. She taught an exercise class that she had to have something with a repetitive rhythm to it. So disco was made for that, So there was a lot of that. And anyway, I had, at that time in my life, whatever came out of Philip Anselmo's mouth was what I was feeling. And I've never wanted, never wanted to break shit more than when I heard Vulgar Display of Power. It was almost like the record or the album cover. It literally punched me in the face. It hit every nerve that was exposed as an angry teenager that, couldn't get a date or whatever was going on at the time. I mean, it was, man, that guy gets it. And when A New Level came on, God is my witness, I probably listened to it 30 times on repeat. I just skipped back, and the beauty of a CD at the time, early CDs, I didn't have to rewind it and try to catch the beginning, and just skip back a song, skip back, and it'd end and skip back, and skip back. And I memorized the lyrics like the first hour I had that album to that song, and every lyric hit exactly where it needed to. And I grew this to this day, this love affair of the feel. I know you guys play guitar in your musician style, and the lyrics and the vocal performance hit me a lot differently. And I'm not saying you guys don't pay attention to lyrics or so on and so forth, but I ingest them. I take what they're saying and I sort of think vicariously, if you will, through those certain artists. Sully from Godsmack is another great one at that. The inflection, the power they have in their voice. And Phil was probably one of, if not the best, at that rage factor. It was still coherent, but it translated to exactly how I felt. How it was being spit into a microphone was exactly how I was feeling at that time. And that album, that time in my life, hit me perfectly, and it's stuck with me, not just sort of, or back burnered. It has always been between a number 1 and 2 album in my life. When I hear any song on that album, I can pick out and not just listen to, but absorb. And it's still just as poignant today to me. Now these are all personal stories, but to me, we talked just a second ago, I wonder if everybody has something like that, an album that hit them at a time where they really needed to hear it, where it really sent them into it. Kind of, I listened to Anthrax and so on and so forth, but Anthrax and Pantera are in the same rack in the record store, and that's about it. Really. Anthrax is a thrash metal band. Pantera, I think, has always been something very different. They're
an entity to themselves.
Yeah.
I've never been able to classify, other than they're metal, right?
Yeah.
They're not really thrash. They're border on extreme metal, but they're not death metal. They're not hardcore, but they have hardcore elements. What are they? Some people call them groove metal. I never understood that at all. But they're just, and I totally get what you're thinking or saying. And I know a lot of people were affected by Pantera the exact same way. And for me, I stopped listening to metal quite a bit in the 90s, especially the early part of the 90s.
Yeah.
And they were the only metal band that were grabbing my attention for a while.
Yeah. No, and it to me, and then I couldn't get enough of it, Yeah. And then when Far Beyond Driven came out, I don't think I wouldn't even think I was ready for that, even taking vulgar, because that was next level. I mean, it was almost, I wouldn't say scary, but I mean, it was the next level of their. I couldn't believe a band could be that melodic and that heavy.
Exactly. Yep.
I mean, it was like a wet blanket that they put over you and just beat you over the head. I mean, it was, and it's still to this day. It's still, if I'm having a bad day at work or something, I can flick that on and it kind of takes that off of me and puts that on them type of vibe. But
that's great.
Man, does it work? That's still one of my go-tos.
So guys, that's part 1 of our musical memories. So stay tuned. Craig and George are going to join us on part 2, and we'll be right back with that. Take care. Bye-bye.